This happened when I was 25 years old. I was driving from North to South Texas, and due to my work schedule, I could only make the trip late at night. The drive along Route 281 was long and uneventful at those hours. An easy, straight path, but staying awake was a constant struggle. I was exhausted from work, and hitting the road immediately afterward was brutal. To keep myself going, I had to make several stops at random gas stations for coffee. It was during one of these stops, maybe the third, that things took a dark turn. By then, I was starting to feel sleepy again, and my gas tank was running low. I pulled into the first gas station I came across. A small, desolate place on one of the side roads. I don't remember the brand, maybe a Sunoco or a Shell, but it was dimly lit and eerily quiet. There was only one other car in the parking lot. I parked next to a pump and went inside. The shop was small, with two people inside. The cashier, a middle-aged Hispanic man, and another man pacing the aisles. His presence immediately put me on edge. He seemed restless, his movements sharp and unsettling. Trying to ignore him, I walked over to the coffee machine and poured myself a cup. Out of nowhere, the man approached me. "Careful, it's hot," he said, his voice flat and unnervingly casual. Then, without waiting for a response, he turned and walked away. His comment felt unnecessary, like a poor attempt to start a conversation, and I wasn't in the mood. I stayed silent, paid him no mind, and carried my coffee to the counter. As I was paying for my coffee and gas, the man reappeared, standing close behind me. "I really like that top," he said. His voice carried an air of familiarity that felt wrong, intrusive. I muttered a quick thank you, just loud enough for him to hear, and hoped he would leave me alone. Instead, he pressed on. "Where are you heading off to so late at night?" he asked, his tone prying. My patience snapped. I turned to him and said firmly, "Leave me alone." The cashier, who seemed uninterested or unaware of the tension, offered no help. The man, undeterred, responded with a mocking, "Calm down." I didn't dignify him with a reply. Instead, I grabbed my coffee, walked out to my car, and began pumping gas. A few seconds later, I heard the shop door open and close. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the man walking toward me. He stopped at the pump opposite mine and just stood there, staring. His posture was relaxed, but his gaze was piercing, unnerving. He wasn't filling up gas. He didn't even have a car there. He was just watching me. I gripped the pump tighter and debated whether to grab the pepper spray from my center console. The man broke the silence. "Are you alone?" he asked, his voice carrying a sinister edge that sent a chill down my spine. I forced myself to stay calm. "No," I lied. "My boyfriend is in the car." To sell the lie, I opened the door, pretending to check on my imaginary passenger, and grabbed the pepper spray from the console. I held it at my side, my focus still on the gas pump. The man tilted his head, studying me. "I don't see anyone in the car," he said, taking a step closer. That was it. I raised the pepper spray and aimed it at him. His response was chilling, a low, amused chuckle. "Relax," he said, backing away slightly, though his eyes never left me. "I was just trying to make conversation." He continued to retreat, but his gaze remained fixed on me, unsettling and relentless. Finally, the gas pump clicked off, signaling that my tank was full. I had some change left from my payment and needed to go back inside to collect it. The man was now loitering between the shop and my car, forcing me to make a choice. I decided to retrieve my change. Holding the pepper spray aloft, I walked past him and into the shop. The cashier looked at me with mild curiosity as I approached the counter. "That guy out there is making me really uncomfortable," I said, my voice low and urgent. The cashier only shrugged, his expression blank. With my change in hand, I hesitated at the glass door, scanning the parking lot. The man was nowhere to be seen, which somehow felt worse. He could be hiding anywhere. My heart pounded as I stepped outside, lingering on the sidewalk near the entrance. I didn't dare go to my car. Minutes felt like hours. Then, a pickup truck pulled into the lot, parking at one of the pumps. A large man with a beard stepped out. I wasted no time and approached him, explaining the situation in a rush. "Could you check if there's someone hiding behind my car?" I asked. The man, though confused, nodded and walked around my car. His voice boomed a moment later. "What are you doing?" From behind my car, the creepy man bolted into the shadows, disappearing into the darkness surrounding the gas station. My heart raced as the bearded man returned, his face serious. "Be careful out there," he said in a thick southern accent. I thanked him profusely, got into my car, and drove off without looking back. The rest of the drive was tense, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror every few seconds. I couldn't shake the thought of how close I had come to danger. That man had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The realization still haunts me to this day. This happened when I was 26 years old 2 years ago, while I was working part-time at a gas station. At the time, I was taking online university classes and needed extra cash, so I picked up a night shift job, working from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. 3 nights a week. The hours weren't ideal, but the pay was better than most part-time gigs I could find. My training lasted only a few shifts, and soon, I was left to handle the nearly abandoned gas station all on my own. Most nights were quiet. There was a short list of tasks to complete: refilling stock, sweeping, wiping down the counters, which took about an hour. After that, I would either serve the occasional customer or scroll through my phone to pass the time. On one particular night, right after my shift started, I was in the aisles refilling the shelves. I had a cart with me and was going from row to row. The only sound in the building was the low hum of the fridges. Then, out of nowhere, I heard the chime of the front door. I stood up from where I had been kneeling, peeking over the shelf to see who had entered. But when I looked toward the counter, there was no one there. The door was slightly ajar, as though someone had just stepped inside. I waited for a moment, expecting to hear footsteps or see movement in the shop, but it was silent. Eventually, I convinced myself that someone had changed their mind and gone back to their car. Shrugging it off, I returned to stocking shelves. After finishing, I pushed the cart back into the storage room and locked the door. As I stepped back into the main area, I heard the chime again, louder this time. My chest tightened. I quickly walked around the corner to check, but once again, there was no one there. Feeling uneasy, I opened the front door to look outside. The gas pumps were empty, and the parking lot stretched out under dim streetlights, casting long, eerie shadows. There wasn't a single car in sight. I tried to brush off the discomfort, telling myself it was probably the wind or a glitch with the door mechanism. I headed behind the counter, hoping to relax for a while, but that sense of unease lingered. Then I heard it, a faint, dull thump coming from the back door. I froze, my heart immediately picking up pace. It was a single, heavy sound, like someone had pushed against the door and then stopped. Swallowing hard, I pulled up the security camera feed on the monitor. My stomach dropped when I saw it. A man was standing just outside the back door, his hand resting on the handle. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring directly at the door. My hand trembled as I switched camera views to check the front entrance. Rewinding the footage, I saw the same man approach the gas station earlier. He had opened the front door but didn't come inside. Instead, he bolted around to the back of the building. He had done this twice. Panic surged through me. I immediately dialed 911, my voice shaky as I described the situation to the dispatcher. While I was on the phone, a loud thump echoed through the station, this time from the front door. I looked at the live feed. The man was running around the building toward the front entrance. Before I could react, the door flew open with a crash. The man burst inside, slamming the door so hard that the glass rattled. He sprinted toward me, his eyes wide, his face pale and expressionless. My heart pounded as I reached under the counter for the pistol we kept for emergencies. But just as he got close, he stopped abruptly. He stared at me, motionless, for what felt like an eternity. Then, without a word, he turned and ran toward the back of the store. I heard him kicking at the back door, each blow sending loud, violent thumps reverberating through the building. And then silence. I grabbed the phone again, still talking to the dispatcher, barely able to get the words out. Minutes later, the police arrived. 3 officers entered cautiously, heading straight to the back room. That's where they found him. He was standing in the corner, his face pressed against the wall, whispering to himself. His hand clutched a kitchen knife. The officers tried talking to him, but he didn't respond. When they moved closer to detain him, he suddenly lunged, swinging the knife wildly. They tackled him to the ground, subduing him before anyone was hurt. Later, the police told me the man wasn't drunk or on drugs. He was simply off, as they put it. He never explained what he was doing there or why he had targeted the gas station that night. I think about that night often. I'm lucky nothing worse happened, but the what-ifs still haunt me. What if I hadn't noticed him on the cameras? What if he had gotten inside without me being prepared? Some people are just terrifying. This event took place in the mid-1960s in the Atlanta area. At the time, I was about 8 or 9 years old. My father was a school teacher, and he taught in a suburb of Atlanta that was quite a distance from where our home was located. Since I attended the same school, I rode with him every day. Our mornings always started early, too early in my opinion. We would leave the house long before sunrise, driving through the quiet streets toward the school. Several times a week, we stopped to top off on gas at a small, independent station along the way. The station was a humble setup, nothing fancy. It opened early, just in time for commuters like us, and we were often the first car to arrive. In those days, gas stations were full service. The attendant would come out of a small booth to fill your tank, wash your windows, and handle payment. He always carried a wad of bills in his pocket and a coin dispenser on his belt, jingling softly as he walked. Behind the pumps, there were tiny, cramped bathrooms, just enough space for one person. I often used the bathroom in the mornings, as the drive to school was long, and I didn't want to wait. One morning, like so many others, we arrived at the station before dawn. The world was still cloaked in darkness, and the air was heavy with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant hum of passing traffic. But something was off. The station was completely deserted. There were no other cars, no lights in the booth, and no sign of the attendant. My father pulled up to the pump and waited for a moment, expecting the man to appear. When no one came, he tapped the horn. Once, then again, and a few more times for good measure. Still, there was no response. We sat in the car, puzzled. My father speculated that the attendant might be in the bathroom. He blew the horn again, this time holding it down longer, but the station remained eerily quiet. After a few more minutes, he suggested that the attendant might have had car trouble and hadn't been able to get to work on time. We waited a little longer, the silence pressing down on us, until my father finally decided we couldn't afford to waste any more time. "I need to use the bathroom," I said, reaching for the door handle. But my father stopped me. "We'll find another station," he said firmly. "You can use the bathroom there." Disappointed but compliant, I let go of the handle, and we pulled away from the station, leaving it behind in the growing light of dawn. The incident left us both unsettled, but we moved on with our day, filing it away as an odd and unexplained occurrence. 2 days later, the memory came rushing back in the most chilling way imaginable. My father was reading the local newspaper at the kitchen table when he let out a sharp exclamation. Startled, my mother and I looked up as he waved the paper and began reading aloud. The body of a gas station attendant had been discovered, stuffed into the men's bathroom at the very station we frequented. I felt my stomach drop. The details of the article were grim. The attendant had been stabbed multiple times, his life taken in what appeared to be a robbery. The killer had taken all the cash and coins the man had on him. A meager amount, most likely, but apparently enough to warrant such a violent crime. The article didn't specify how much money was stolen, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the horrifying reality of what had occurred in the quiet, familiar station we had visited countless times. As my father read, I felt a chill creep over me. The realization struck me like a punch to the gut. If I had insisted on using the bathroom that morning, I might have opened the door to find the lifeless body of the attendant. The thought haunted me, I imagine myself standing there, frozen in the doorway, staring at the gruesome scene, a memory I would have carried with me for the rest of my life. From that day forward, we never went back to that gas station. Even now, decades later, I can still see it in my mind's eye, the small, dimly lit pumps, the tiny bathroom hidden behind them, and the quiet, foreboding atmosphere that hung over it on that fateful morning. Some moments in life stay with you forever, not because of what happened, but because of what almost did.